Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning. Welcome to the webinar on Itslearning, cloud integrations, and some of the great changes that we've got coming over the next few months, most of which will be in place ready for back to school. So it means everybody will be able to have access to those before back to school to see what's coming, to see how it's really going to improve teaching and learning in its learning, and then move forward with these great changes we've got coming to cloud. I can see we've got lots of people in attendance, and it's fantastic to see so many people here with us today. My name is Stephen Threadgold. I'm Head of Product Management at Itslearning, and I'm being joined by Lars, who is Head of our Product Owners, and Bart, who is one of our Product Owners. And between us, we'll be answering questions as we go. Because we have so many people on this webinar, one thing we're going to do is ask you to use the question system within GoToMeeting. You'll see it in the side panel. You can pop it out, you can type in your question, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go along. Obviously, because there's a lot of people here, the same question might get asked many times, and what we'll do is we'll try and answer it and then say we've answered it a bit further up. We will make a copy of this available to everybody later, so they can see what's going on, and we'll make a copy of the slide deck available later as well. So you'll be able to rewatch the video, and you'll be able to use the slides and see the slides, and maybe even share them with your colleagues. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to start with just a little bit of background on why we think people should be using cloud tools, and there's lots of great reasons why we should use these in teaching and learning every day. We're going to talk about the built-in tools. So we know that one of the concerns that some schools have is if I want to use a cloud tool like Microsoft or Google, we have to have Google accounts, and so do our students and so on. Well, what we've done is we've built some of the cloud tools in, so being able to create documents and edit them and share them and have lots of people collaborating on them. We've built those into Itslearning, and we want to talk a little bit about that. So that's using cloud tools directly from inside Itslearning without needing an account in Google or an account in Microsoft. We'll just remind you that we're already using cloud files today. You can already grab something from Google and put it into a course, or a student can grab something from OneDrive, from Microsoft, and put it into an assignment. So we're already doing that. I just wanted to flag that up. And then we're going to talk about the new cloud integrations, how we're actually going to work with Google and Microsoft, the big two cloud providers, how we're going to bring that into Itslearning. And this, of course, means that you have to have an account in Google and Microsoft, and we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to make this easy and build it into our workflow. So let's start right at the beginning. Why are people using cloud applications? What's in it for me as a teacher? What's in it for me as a learner? There's lots of reasons why people want to use the cloud tools. I think one of the most important points is they're good creative tools. We have access to things like PowerPoint and its equivalent in Google. We have access to word processors, we have access to spreadsheets, and we have access to other tools. And those, of course, students can use to be creative to their heart's content. Teachers can use them to structure content and show those, and we can use those in interesting ways in teaching and learning. So having those great creative tools is a real important part of this. And a lot of those tools are easy to use. They work on different devices, they work on notebooks, they work on Chromebooks, they work on mobile. And having those easy to use tools built in is something that we really want to flag up. And then what we want to do in Itslearning is make sure that accessing those tools is as easy as possible. But I think where cloud tools really start to shine is the concept of collaboration and sharing. So this is where, for instance, I can give all of my class access to a single document, and they can add to it and they can work on it. Or maybe a smaller group want to access it. Maybe we have a working group, 2 or 3 students working on something. They can work on it together and then show that combined work. And we've got this built into Itslearning without needing access to Microsoft and to Google and having accounts on them, but we also work with the big cloud providers, and we'll show that as we go through. And then, of course, something we all have to be wary of, these great tools tend to come at low or even no cost. So we can have access to things like Google Apps for Education at no real cost to the school other than set up and making them work. And then what we want to try and do is build as much of that into Itslearning as possible to really try and reduce the cost and make sure this is a good solution for all. Okay, As we sort of move through, we said we'll try and answer the questions as we go. And I can see, for instance, that Leaf has asked us a question about whether we can use Microsoft Azure Active Directory. We'll talk about the sort of enterprise integrations towards the end of the presentation. The simple answer is we will very soon. You'll see Itslearning appearing on the Microsoft Azure Marketplace, which of course is the commercial, in inverted commas, part of the Microsoft Azure solution, and we'll be allowing Itslearning to work really simply and easily with that as much as possible. So yes, that is coming. So as I said, we'll try and answer questions as we go, but some of these things will appear later on, but it's a good question to start with. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about what we want to do from Itslearning and what you guys are going to see, what your teachers and your learners are going to see as we move towards back to school. Well, we've set ourselves some quite challenging objectives at Itslearning, and really we want everybody to be able to work with applications and services from the major cloud providers, and for the moment that's Office and that's G Suite. More will be added, I'm sure. We can already import from and grab things from Dropbox and things like that, but the real big cloud providers tend to be Google and Microsoft. And for us, it's hiding the complexities of this integration. We want a teacher to be able to just click on an icon that says create a Word document, and that's how simple we've tried to make it. And then we want them to be able to say, well, I think I'm going to share this, collaborate with these people, and we want to make that as simple as possible. And I'm going to show you some of that as we move through. So let's talk about using the cloud without needing the cloud, so without needing accounts in Microsoft and Google. Here we can see Itslearning. I'm going to use a lot of screenshots from Itslearning, some of which are part of our existing products, some of which are what we're going to be releasing between now and the summer and beyond. And I'll sort of flag these up as we go and talk about how we're simple we're trying to make these, and also give you a good idea about when everybody will be able to get their hands on them and use them in the classroom. So here I am inside the Itslearning ad page, and as you can probably see, I've got adding an Excel, adding a PowerPoint, and adding a Word document. So our built-in tools are based on Microsoft technology. There is no way at the moment to sort of build in Google tools without having accounts in Google. That's just the way they work. But what we've done working with Microsoft is we've found a way to bring their cloud tools in without needing an account. So I'm using these without having an account on Outlook or Hotmail or OneDrive. I simply don't have one of those, but I can still use those tools. So if I was to click on create a Word document, in the background that's going to pop up a window, and there we are, there's my Word document, and I can start editing that straight away. So I've not needed to put in account details. I don't even have an account with Office. This is all from within Itslearning. And here I'm in the context of a teacher. So I've created this document, and I can add it to my course, and that means my students can then see it. And as I update it, my students can see the updated version, and they'll view it within the Word viewer. And you can make that full screen as well, so you can sort of have it taking up all of the screen and look just like Microsoft does if you were using it on the Microsoft site. But the important thing is the tools are built in. I can access them directly. And let's say I wanted to move this up a gear. I'm creating a document, for instance, reporting on what one of my struggling students has done, and I know they've been trying, and I know they've been working hard, and I want to give them a bit of help and support. So what I can do is I can invite them in maybe to start working on this document with me. Okay, so I can go in and I can simply say, these are all the people in my course. They've all got view access, but I'm going to pick one of my students. In this particular case, I'm going to pick Carol, and I'm going to give her editing access. And that means she doesn't just view it, but she can also edit it. Okay. So again, she doesn't need an account on Microsoft or anything like that. This is all built into Itslearning. Okay. So here I am logged in as Carol. She sees that I've added a new Word essay. I can see it. It's got the little Word icon. I know it's Word. And if Carol clicks on that, because she's been given editing permissions, she doesn't see a read-only view. She can actually go in and she can start working on it. And if the teacher, if I as Erwin, I'm in there and I'm working at the same time, she can see that there I am. I'm typing, she's typing, I can see what she's doing, she can see what I'm doing, and we're working on this collaboratively. And we've done this all through the existing tools that sit within Itslearning. And of course, we can take that to the next level. I can have my whole class working on it. I can have, for instance, maybe one half of the class working on one version and one half of the class working on another version, and then we can compare them. Okay. Also, if a student submits using this system, I can go in and add some comments, and I can say, well, I really like this submission. I thought you did really well there, and the students can see those comments as well. So what we're doing here is we're leveraging the sort of real power of cloud. That's great tools, that's great collaboration, that's ease of use, and we're bringing them all into Itslearning. And it's an important sort of summary just to say that these tools don't need you to have an account with Microsoft. I know they're the Microsoft tools, but you don't need to have an account on Microsoft. They work from in with the browser, they work on mobile devices, you can share, you can create, you can collaborate. Yeah. They're already in use by customers. We rolled this out as a large-scale pilot. We've got about 100 or so customers using it, but of course all the schools that sit within all those customers. We're getting lots of feedback on that, on how to make it better and how to improve it. And then when we've gathered all that feedback together, we're then going to release this to all of our customers before the summer. So this will be in place before the summer, way before we go back to school. And of course, it's an optional thing. It's one of those things that we want people to use and want people to get, as much from as possible. But we also know, for instance, some schools, some sites, some customers, for instance, really want to focus on using Google, and that's absolutely fine. So this, if you like, is an offering that is great for, smaller schools that may not have Google accounts or Microsoft accounts, everybody. Maybe you're concerned about, sharing data with these, large providers. And you want to have this, all from within Itslearning. So, it's a really good way of getting into the cloud without needing external accounts and so on. It's great for some customers. Some other customers, it might not be exactly what they want, and they may want to move on to using, for instance, Google and Office 365 in the cloud completely. And we'll talk about that as we go through it. Okay. So what we'll do now is I'm just going to remind you that we already have some really good, useful integrations that exist in Itslearning, and those are there for us to use, and those are ours to work with now. So what we've just shown you with the clouds built into Itslearning is coming for lots of customers are trying it out and telling us and giving us feedback. We're going to release it to everybody over the summer. But today, all of our users have access to Google Drive and Dropbox and OneDrive. So if they're working in the cloud, and this is, this is where we need an account on either Google or Dropbox or in OneDrive, and you can grab those things and put them into courses and plans and assignments and library. I think it's one of those things that people have not realized. We've already got this in place. It's been in place for quite a time. And what we want to do now is we really want to lift this. We want to make it so much better and so much easier. And we want to bring in the concept of not just, for instance, uploading a file from Google, but creating a live collaboration to a Google file or creating a live collaboration to an Office file. So these are the things that we're trying to do, and these are the things we're introducing between now and back to school this year. So let's talk about what's now called G Suite and Office 365 integration into Itslearning. So starting in the spring and rolling out before the summer, this will actually be going out to 1 or 2 sites in 1-2 weeks time. Then we'll be putting it onto all of our sales and demo sites not long after that. We'll be getting feedback, we'll be looking, we'll be making sure everything's in a good way, and we want then to roll this out completely to everybody before back to school this year. So collaboration and the cloud. This is where Itslearning sits and works with either G Suite or Office 365 or both. So one of the things and one of the interesting bits of feedback we got is we have some customers where schools are deciding themselves, are they using G Suite, are they using Office? It's completely up to them. So you'll see some screens later on where we've assumed that you want to be able to use both, that you don't want to say I'm a big G Suite user, I'm a big Office user. And what we'll do is our staff will work with customers to say, do you want all of these activated, or do you just want, for instance, integration with Office 365 integrated. Okay, so we'll give that choice out to customers because we know some want to use all, some would just like their schools to use whatever they want, and we'll turn it all on. But we will give that control, because if, for instance, you're a customer rolling out Office 365 to all of your schools, you would probably want them to just use that and not to use G Suite. Okay, so we'll give that choice. We'll make sure that choice is in place. So collaboration in the cloud. So this is where students and teachers can work on documents. We saw it built into Itslearning, but we can also work with G Suite and Office. Most of the examples I'm going to show are G Suite, just because Google is our first major integration. It'll be the first one we roll out, and Office 365 will follow a bit later. And that's not favoritism. It's just that's the sort of feedback we've had, that there's lots of people already using Google, and so we'll be doing Google first. But we will be supporting the same systems you see now for Google for Office 365, and we plan to have all of those in place for back to school. So this is where the teacher is going to be creating a collaboration and sharing it with their students, and they're going to be giving it a context and saying, look, this is something I want you to work on. How are we going to do that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step through how a teacher would, for instance, create a collaboration, and how they would give it to the kids, what the kids would see, and how they would use it. And to do that, I have to introduce one of the new features we have coming for back to school, which we're calling the task. So one of the things when we were talking to customers and working with students and working with teachers is that when we give a collaboration, when I say to a group of students, I want you to work together, we normally have to put a context around it. We normally have to say, you know, we are working towards, for instance, Unit 5A, this is in maths, this is what I want you to try and achieve when you work together. So just having a collaboration, you know, somewhere in the course resources, we thought, well, that's great, that's useful, that has some merit, but it's not hitting the education objectives. It's not really going to make this as you know, as good and as easy and as simple as we want. So one of the reasons that we introduced a task was to be able to put a context around these things. So we have a new ad system coming in Itslearning, ready for back to school. And when I click on that, I'll be able to add quickly the most common elements, the things that I want to create, you know, more frequently. We have a huge ad page. We saw it before, and from that I can add you know, surveys and questionnaires and all sorts of things. But what we want to do is you know, move up the most common things so I can quickly create them. And we want the task to be, you know, something that's created, you know, very, very often and you know, with you know, quickly. So I create my task, give my task a title, give my task a context, some sort of context, maybe create, you know, link it to learning objectives. And we've got a new concept coming as well, which is saying this task or this assignment or this other piece of work is, you know, homework. And this is something we want the students to do outside the normal classroom. Of course, we're talking about extending the classroom all the time. We want to make it a bit clearer that this is a task I want to set them, maybe with a deadline of the next course that I want, or the next time we meet, to say this is something I want you to do. And it's something that's been asked for by a lot of our customers. We've listened, we've taken it on board, and we're now having the ability to say that these things we've created are homework. And that allows us to do lots of very exciting things in terms of reporting on homework and showing what's going on, and you know, using this in a very exciting way. So homework is going to be seen all through Itslearning, and of course that will be translated into the you know, the relevant languages. Sometimes we call it homework, sometimes refer to out of class learning. There's all sorts of different ways to discuss that, but it's really just a flag, it's just a tick box to say this is something that, you know, I want you to do outside. And that's why a context is important. That's why it's important for me to say what's going on. And then if I go down to the more options, I'll get an option. Because this school, for instance, is one of the ones that is using Google, it'll say collaborate with Google Docs. If I was an Office 365 user, it would say collaborate with Office 365. If the customer said, I want my schools to have both, it would list both. But what we're trying to do is sort of, you know, start with Google, and we'll then move on to Office as well. So if I hit collaborate with Google Docs, it'll open up Google. If I've not authenticated, if I've not given Itslearning permission to do this, it'll pop up a box saying Itslearning would like to have permission to access your files on Google. Is that okay? You'll put in your Google username and password, and then from that point on, that's remembered. We know that you've given permission, and we don't need to ask that again. Okay, so it's a really simple way. It'll say at that point, we want to be able to access your Google items. And we've got some enterprise level integrations coming later in the year that will allow schools to set this up beforehand so students don't need to go through this step. But at this point, if I didn't have access, it would say, oh, I'd really like to be able to access these, please, and that's something that we can easily do. I then pick my document from Google. So in this particular case, I'm working on a budget spreadsheet, and I want my student to collaborate together to create, a good budget, maybe for something within the class or something else. And when I click done, it'll then add that into the task. And I can see the Google icon, and if I just zoom in a little bit, I can see that it's a Google document, and if I click on that, it will open it in Google, and I will continue to edit it in Google. And if my students click on that, they will view it in Google, and they will be able to collaborate in Google. And as you can see, it says there, students assign this task and edit the document. So I know at a glance that I've created a collaboration. It's something that my students can edit. It's something they can contribute to. Okay? It's not static. They can go in and they can change it. And of course, earlier in the presentation, we spoke about giving permissions. I can choose which of the students, normally it's the whole class, but I can, divide it down into the groups I've created or whatever and say who has access to it. So it uses that same sort of permission system. By default, we assume everybody in the class wants to contribute, but you can choose to sort of narrow that down to maybe just one group of students. So what we've done is we've created that in the cloud. I've not had to worry too much about permissions and things like that because those have been set for me on the class level, and then I can drill down and change them. So that's one way. That's getting collaboration working. And then when the students click on that, they can edit it and they can work on it as if it was their own document. One of the other things that we want to introduce, and this is one of the things that's been called for by the more advanced users of cloud documents, is being able to not upload a cloud document from either Office or G Suite, but actually keep a live link to it. And really what that means is that if I let students have access to it, they have read-only access to it, they can't edit, they can't contribute, but I can continue to update it. So if I update it in the background, then students, when they go back in, they will see my refreshed version. And to do that, we have our new file control that you'll be seeing all across Itslearning. It's really simple. I can drag and drop files from my device, that's great, or when I click on it, it will give me choices. And these choices we've sort of grouped into three areas. The area that we start with is I want to upload from a device. I want to upload from Google. Basically, I want to put a copy into Itslearning. Okay? So that's going to actually take it from wherever it is on your computer, wherever, and put that copy into Itslearning. But also, you might want to create a link to it. Okay? And what we're doing here is we're not putting a copy of that document in. We're putting a link to it. You can continue to work on it, but everybody else can only view it. And it'll work with Google, it will work with Office 365, and you'll also see something called Your Files. That's basically a place where I got a list of all of my files. That's something that's coming later in the year, but we just wanted to show the sort of, the full screens now. And if you remember back to earlier in the presentation, if I want to, I can create a Word document or a PowerPoint document or an Excel document directly in Itslearning without needing a cloud system. Okay. So we've got these choices. I can upload from, I can link to, or I can create. And if I was to link to a Google document, again, it would open up my Google in the cloud. I pick the file that I want, I select it, and then it adds it into the task. And here we can see it's a linked file. So again, at a glance, I can see what's a collaboration. It says students can edit this, or it says it's a linked file. And again, if I click on this, it won't download it, anything like that. It'll open it in the cloud. I can work on it. And when my students click on it, same for them, they'll see the linked live version. They'll be able to use that and see that. And then I'll be able to make changes to it. And then, of course, I can do the traditional thing which we're all used to doing, which is I can upload from my computer or wherever. I can pick it and I can add it. And when this gets added in, as you can see, it doesn't say linked. It doesn't say students can edit it. It's just a file, and then that will be handled in the way that files are. And of course, this was a Word document I picked, but that could be any file, any of the files that we allow. So we're still allowing you to upload files from your computer and so on, but we're just introducing the concept of files that are linked to the cloud and files that are linked and collaborated on in the cloud. Of course, if I think, oh, I've got too many files now in this task, there's too many things in place, there's a little X that sits across all of these, and what I can do is I can get rid of my file by clicking on that, and of course it'll say, you sure? That won't delete the file on Google. It will stay on Google, but it's no longer part of this task. It's no longer something that then the students will see within this task. Okay, so it's keeping the cloud files within the cloud, and if you want to, you can copy them into Itslearning. That's fine. Okay, but we want people to be using the cloud in the way it's designed to, and they'll stay off in the cloud until I call them into the task. So when I save this, it'll then give me a nice summary because I've done different things. So I can see my summary, and it says, look, you've created a collaboration and students can edit it. You've uploaded a file. And as you recall, I deleted my linked file. Otherwise, it would also say there's a file and it's linked. And of course, I can have multiple files, so my task can contain many things. And then we see the homework tag. That's just reminding us that it's homework. And when the student sees it, they'll see that same tag saying it's homework. So they get that context around it. And when students then go in and view it, so a student will be able to see the files, a student will know it's homework. And if a student completes it and says they've completed it, I can start to see who's completed the task. So the student's view, okay, will have the files, and one of them's a collaboration and one of them's there for me to download. I've got those and I can work on them, and it's put it into my task list so I can see it's a task and it's there to be completed. And then when the students have completed it, they can say I'm done, and then the teacher will know they've finished, and the teacher can see who's completed the task and who hasn't completed the task. So what we're trying to do is bring all of those great collaborative cloud tools and just drop them into Itslearning's workflow. So as a teacher, I've not needed to be too concerned about where my files are. I know at a glance if they're collaborations or they're linked, so I know the context of the students are using them, and the students know the context as well. They know whether it's just to view, they know whether it's collaboration, and I can give them all the help and support I need when I'm actually creating the task. So I wanted to show the cloud integration through the task because it shows how we're trying to build it into the workflow. You will still, in those of you that use Itslearning now, you can still go into a course and add and link to a Google document. You'll still see that great new tool with all of those options will appear in the course, it'll appear in plans, it'll appear in library, it'll be ubiquitous across all of Itslearning. But if you really want to create a collaboration, then we'll be putting those in the task because we want the students to actively go in and work on it. So if I just summarize these sort of changes, they're built into Itslearning. The cloud file integration is right at the heart of Itslearning. I've used examples from Google, but Office 365 will work in the same way. And of course, we've got our built-in tools as well if you want to use those. So you can create collaborative tasks in Google or Office 365 or both. And these cloud files will be an important part of Planner. You'll be able to grab files from the cloud and put them into Planner. And it means you can structure content from many different sources and target it at your students. So cloud integration, we hope, will be as simple as possible. You can set it up at an enterprise level, and that's something you can talk to our local teams about, and they can help that work through. Or it's something that can be done on an ad hoc level, and you can just go in and give Itslearning permission to access your Google account, and then we'll be able to pull down these files and work with them in the way that you've just seen. Okay, so one of the questions we get when we've shown this to customers, we've been showing, we've been going through pilots, we've been demoing the screens, we've been showing how this works. One of the big questions we get is, what happens if a student's working in the cloud, they're working in Google, that's where they like to work, and they're going to submit an assignment. Okay, so they're going to put an assignment into Itslearning. They've got a nice little Word document or a Google word processor document, and they're going to upload that into Itslearning. They, of course, can continue to work on that in the cloud if they want to. So how are we going to handle that? How are we going to make that as simple as possible? And again, what we've done is we've taken a step back. We have a new assignment tool coming, which is much easier to follow, really visual, works well on mobile devices, and shows at a glance whether people have submitted or not submitted, what the status is. And what we want to do is we want to really support all cloud systems within our assignment tool. So as well as improving the assignment tool and making that a lot better, we've got the concept, for instance, so I've got my student Carol, who we spoke about before, and she's working in G Suite. Okay? So she's been working hard in G Suite, she's been working on her mobile device, she's been working in other places. She then comes to the assignment and she's submitting it to Itslearning for the teacher to assess. What we're doing is we will then take a copy of that from G Suite when it's submitted. Okay? So if she continues to work on it now, she's working on her version. The version that the teacher is assessing is the version that was handed in by the deadline for the assignment. Okay? So the student can continue to work in G Suite, that's up to them, but what we've done is we've now taken a copy of that. Okay? And we have a new tool coming in Itslearning, which will be accessed through the assignment system, and this will allow teachers to add comments and give feedback directly on those submitted files. And this will happen in the browser, on the mobile device. It's a really nice system. So what we're doing is we're giving teachers the ability to comment and add constructive comments and highlight things and say, look, I think this is really good, provide formative, summative feedback. Of course, grade as well and give it a final grade, that's no problem, but also put these comments directly onto this stored Itslearning copy. So what we have is we have a definitive statement of submission. We know what the student submitted at that time, and the teacher can comment back on that. And of course, if the teacher wants, you don't have to, but if the teacher wants, the student can see that work. They can see those comments, they can see the things they've added, and if the school allows it, the teacher allows it, if the tutor wants to, then the student can resubmit that, and it goes into the process again, and it can be commented on, and the student can see those comments if you want to have a continuous cycle. Okay. So for instance, what we could do, and this is some of the things that are already sort of starting to be used by schools, is the students could put things informally in a collaboration and work together, then submit something, the teacher can then give them feedback and the students can resubmit. Of course, some schools don't allow resubmission, that's absolutely fine, it's completely under teacher control. So what you'd do there is you'd simply return the assignment with all of the comments on so the students can learn from that and move forwards. And if they do resubmit, as we said, they'll get another copy for annotation. Okay. So we'll have the up-to-date annotated version stored within Itslearning, even if they continue to work in G Suite. And we'll talk about some of the other things we've got coming later in the year where we start to really leverage this by, for instance, having the tutors being able to set up templates in Office tools. But that's not coming for back to school, or everything we've seen here is coming for back to school. That's something that's going to appear in the this not too distant future, not long after back to school. So assignment and cloud services. Students can work in a favorite cloud provider, work in G Suite, work wherever they want, but the teacher doesn't need to be concerned about that. The teacher will see a definitive version that they can comment on from within the browser. So if a student, for instance, if we're in the university and the student's using Office and the teacher doesn't have an Office account, that's fine. You'll be able to comment within Itslearning without going into Office or anything like that. You'll be able to comment directly in the browser, make your changes, make your comments, and the student can see those. So it doesn't matter if it comes from G Suite or Office, it's the same built-in annotation tool. And so this is making it as simple as possible for teachers to be able to give that great feedback. So there's lots of other things that are coming to do with cloud, ready for back to school. As we've already mentioned, Leaf asked us right at the beginning of the meeting, the webinar, we will have Itslearning is in the process of going on to the Azure Marketplace, which is where you can then use Active Directory and Azure to sync with Itslearning. We've got an enterprise integration with Google coming in the same way. So it means that we can pre-load all of the students' details from Google, all of their Google identification, so we can then have a good integration between Itslearning and Google right from day one. And of course, we also have the ad hoc service where you just log in once and we remember that. And then this cloud linking, as I said, will be across courses and libraries and plans and everywhere. It won't just be in the task. You'll be able to upload and link in a library or in a plan, and make sure you've got that great communication going. And then after back to school, our next stage is really to start to look at how we integrate things like the calendar from Office and Google. There's lots of different ways to do that. We want to get everybody using the cloud service, get those in place first, and then when we've got those in place and have a really solid base to move forwards, we will then make sure that things like calendar and so on are syncing in a good place. And then, as we've said, we want to introduce the concept of templated assignments. That means the teacher creates, for instance, a Google document and says, this is what I want you to do, edit this document, add something to it, and then submit it. So you can do that at the moment because, of course, you can add that to your assignment and the kids can take that and put it into Google, but we want to make that far more automated. We want basically to be able to do this with a couple of clicks. And this is something that we have to have in place not long after you get back from the summer vacation. So we've talked a lot about cloud, and we'll sort of start to sum up what we've done with cloud. But I just wanted to stress, cloud is just one part of the massive number of improvements we have coming to Itslearning between now and back to school. So some of the other highlights we've got, I'm not going to spend time on these now, we'll talk about these in future sessions, but we've got lots of changes coming to our mobile. In our mobile, you'll be able to jump into a course directly from the mobile app. You won't just see sort of summaries and things like that. You can jump into the course and then navigate down through the course and see the resources in the course. And it's going to work really well on tablets. So if you have a small mobile, that's great. The screen will show information in a really concise way. But if you've got a larger tablet, it will resize and you'll be able to use the whole of the tablet real estate. So loads of good changes coming to mobile. We're really spending time on upping the ease of use of Itslearning. We want that to be so much better. We want that to be, make Itslearning as simple as possible to use. And we've got these great concepts coming with onboarding, where we'll guide your teachers through how to create a course, how to welcome the students, how to make a plan, how to add a bulletin, how to add a picture, how to really get their course going right from the start. So this onboarding will start to appear. We've already got some in Itslearning, but we're going to have a lot more, and it's really going to be focused on making courses as great as possible. And then we're making lots of changes to the library. We've got new ways to share. We've got onboarding that guides people through how to use the library. And then we're going to make it a lot easier to grab things from the library and drop them straight into the course and straight into the plan as well. So lots of other changes coming from Itslearning over the next few months in the lead up to back to school. You can get lots more information from your local Itslearning representative. Also, we have a brand new roadmap. It's just rolling out across our sites at the moment. The roadmap shows both our ethos, what we're really trying to do, for instance, that we want to work with the cloud, but we want to work in a way that hides the complexity. It gives you a good bit of insight into what we're doing and then gives you some real insight into when these things are going to be delivered and what they're going to look like. So our new roadmap is available. It's rolling out to our local teams now. The main version on our on our US site is there, and you'll soon see that across all of the local teams as well. So it just really remains for me to say thank you very much for your time. And what we'll do now is we'll just quickly whiz through the questions, see if there's any more to answer. As I said, this is the first part of many presentations we want to give to sort of show you what we're doing. We're very proud of what's coming with Itslearning between now and back to school. As I said, it's not just about cloud. Cloud is one element. Onboarding, mobile, library, sharing, improvements to gradebook. All of Itslearning is being lifted in a way that we really hope is going to make this not just a improved teaching and learning through having good features in place, but improved teaching and learning by having simple, creative workflows that all of our teachers can use straight from day one. We will make this presentation available. We'll make sure that that can be got up by our different customers and so on, and we'll make this recording available so you can go through this again. So thank you very much for your attendance. We're still answering questions. If you haven't seen your question answered, then just either drop it in again. I'm just looking through now to say I think nearly all questions have been answered. Just to answer the question on admin of G Suite through Itslearning, we're not looking to provide a view of the administration consoles in G Suite through Itslearning. We do want to have a enterprise integration, which means if you've set something up in G Suite, we can move the details and the emails across to the users. We can do that through our APIs, through the things that we normally provision from. But no, we're not. Itslearning is not going to be controlling G Suite. G Suite is G Suite, and Office 365 is Office 365. Those are sort of owned and run by Google and Microsoft respectively. So we won't be using Itslearning to administrate those, but of course you can use all of the tools within them as end users. I think that is all of the questions. Oh, I'll just answer one from Magnus. Teachers using updated thumbnails. We're going to start with just the icons. You'll be able to see the icons and click on those. We are looking at bringing in thumbnails. That's something which we will come up with later, because that means we need a slightly different view and a slightly different piece of real estate, because of course to be useful those thumbnails do need to be quite large. So we're going to start with the icons and the names and so on, and then we're looking at introducing the thumbnails later. And is it linked to any Google files? You can link to any Google files that you can get through G Suite. We're not planning to limit that. It's something that we really want to have. We want to use all the tools in G Suite. There's a good drawing application in G Suite. We want that to be used as well. So we are not planning to prohibit access to anything. If it's there, we want people to use it. And to answer some of the other questions we've had on Google, enterprise Google integration and enterprise Azure integration, we want people to be able to log in to, for instance, Google, and then use that access to get into Itslearning. This is the sort of enterprise level we talked about before, and the same for Office. So it's really just a case of making sure that those are in place, and that's something our local consultants will be able to talk to customers about and roll out. Well, we've had a question about taking a copy and exceeding the local storage limit. This is always a challenge, because of course when we've got things in the cloud, Microsoft and Google are providing lots and lots of space. That's absolutely great. We're very conscious of what happens when we take those copies. We'll be trying to ensure that that we're taking we just have one copy. We have a single master copy, because we don't want to be storing lots and lots and lots and lots of local copies of things which sort of go through the local storage. So that's something we're looking at the moment. What we don't want to do, and what we never do, is we don't sort of just say this can't be uploaded because storage has been hit. If there are problems there, then our local teams can work with the customers, find out why there's so much storage being used and have a look around that. What we will never do is stop things being updated and stop the teaching and learning. So we can talk about it after and see what we can do to improve the situation and so on. But no, it shouldn't really affect people using it on the daily basis if there's a lot of things used. We were asked a question about when single sign-on is nailed, will there be a back-end way to pre-connect students to cloud storage? That's what we mean by the enterprise integration. So I'll be able to say that for both Google and Office that when I create, Carol, the student, I can also say that her either Google email address is Carol at G Suite blah 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 blah, or Carol at Microsoft blah 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 blah, and that will set up those links. So that's something that because it's an enterprise integration, we'll roll out to our local consultants. But yes, we're putting those tools in place as part of this sort of back to school release. Azure Marketplace for Microsoft, and then just an enterprise ability to link these accounts for Google, and that's something we know to really make things work in a good way. A couple of questions about can be a beta tester for our Azure authentication. We will be working with our local teams, because we will roll this out to the local teams really soon. In fact, it's all ready. It's actually all complete, but we have just a couple of things we need to agree with Microsoft on how to log out. Because if we use Microsoft as an IDP, we can log out. If you use Itslearning as the identity manager, Microsoft like a particular type of logging out system. We want to make sure everything is secure and people know that when they log out, they're logged out. So yes, as soon as that's there, all of our local teams will be looking for customers to start working with to get this rolled out. I'll grab your name and make sure that the relevant team have your details. James, I'll grab those from this presentation. So yes, it'll be rolled out slowly, but what we'll do is we'll have all of this available to the local teams. Then they can work with the customers that want to start trialing the Azure marketplace. Then yeah, that's absolutely great. Okay, so I'm conscious of the time. We've overrun ever so slightly. We were sort of aiming for 45 minutes, and I think we just hit 50. As I said, we'll make the presentation available. Please, if you have any other questions, contact your local support reps, and they will make sure that they hit us and we come through. We're going to run more of these sessions where we both display what we're doing, but also try and talk through and give you as many answers as possible. And you can see we try to answer many of these questions. It's great to talk to you guys like this. And great to be able to sort of answer as many of these things directly. I've just noticed that Jürgen said, is it possible to integrate a calendar with a personal Outlook? That's what we're looking at after the back to school push. Our next challenge, when we've got Azure in place, when we've got the G Suite enterprise integration in place, is then to see how best to work with calendars. That's actually some interesting complexities there, and we want to make sure we have a really good solution that works. But yes, it is something we plan to have coming. It's going to come after we've got the collaboration and the other document work done. But yes, absolutely, we know it's wanted, and it's really something we want to do. So thank you all for your attendance today. It's been great to see so many people here. We've had I think we nearly hit 200 at one point, which is just fantastic. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for your questions. And we look forward to talking to you again when we have another one of these sessions. We'll pick another one of the big things we've got coming, whether it's mobile or the fantastic UX changes we've got, and we'll talk about those and again give another chance to answer questions in this forum. So thank you all, have a good weekend, and we'll speak soon.